Hi, welcome to another episode of the show, AllDay Edify. We're your hosts. I'm Corey, and this is my lovely wife, Tasha.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on today. So, we're still in our series of mindset change for men, where we're focusing on our men and growth development. And so, today's show, what we're going to be talking about is building bridges without boundaries. So, we're talking about building bridges without boundaries. And so, as we were talking and we were discussing this actual topic, there were some
Mhm.
statistics that we decided to show you guys that we felt that would be actually ideal for this particular show.
Absolutely. What we actually found is that in a study titled What Unites and Divides Urban, Suburban, and Rural Communities, among the top six common problems that each of these demographics faced were poverty, access to public transportation, availability of affordable jobs, availability of affordable housing. And the number one item that was consistent in urban, suburban, and rural communities was actually drug addiction. Drug addiction. And if you can see there, it shows that you see those numbers. Well, each number represents a percentage out of 100 of people in that community who took the survey. And so this is actually a time frame of like a year and a half before the pandemic took place. So it's not that long ago. Okay. And so again, this was less than 2 years ago. And this is this is some really impactful information that causes you to look at things like, wow.
So that's really, really amazing when you think about it, because that's all three shared demographics. That's the urban,
Yes.
suburban, and the rural communities.
Absolutely. And so what we're actually saying is that in reality, there is no room for us to draw, kind of like criticism, one community versus another or anything like that. What we actually should take away from this is that in our suburban, rural, and urban communities, this shows that we actually have more in common. We have more similarities than we do differences. And what it actually takes is for us to have unified and be unified by leadership. People who are leaders who understand how to bridge and connect those gaps that make us think that we are more different than we are similar.
Wow, I agree. I agree with that. And so today, that leads us to today's guest, who is a man who has bridged communities. He's built communities from the ground up, and he has uprooted from one community to another for the purpose of building people. And so today,
Yes.
as a guest on our show, we have Dr. Frank Gilliard with us on today.
Dr. Gilliard, how you doing today?
I'm well, thank you, and I want to say thank you for inviting me to your show today. I'm very proud to be here with you.
Good, good. Well, Dr. Gilliard, we want to give you this space here as we open up our interview and invite you into becoming familiar with our viewers. Please just spend a moment, introducing yourself and kind of describing yourself.
Thank you. Um, I'm here in Flint since 2008. Prior to coming to Flint, I was in Newark, New Jersey. I led a church there, but I also was involved in community development. One of the things that struck me when I came to Newark as a pastor was the blight that they were suffering. And I know that you all are familiar, if you know history, you're familiar with the riots of 1968 that tore the city of Newark apart, and probably many other cities, because that riot occurred as a result of the execution of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. When I arrived in Newark in 2000, what was it, 1996, the city was still very messed up. And so we went to work to rebuild the community around our church. Um, the community existed of maybe six properties on that whole block. And then the city wasn't taking care of the vacant lot. So we had, high weeds, and much like what we see in the city of Flint today with the vacant lots. And we also had a very bad rodent problem. So the what we did was we formed a nonprofit community development organization that focused on rebuilding the houses in those blighted areas. And we started in '96. We also culminated with our building projects in 2005. And by that period, we had rebuilt several blocks, and we had populated the city with 300 new units of affordable housing.
Wow.
And what we were looking to do at that time was to give homeowners, new homeowners, the opportunity also to be landlords, because we were building two family units. And the person who bought that two family unit would also have the opportunity to rent the second unit. They live in the first unit, rent the second unit. And the template that we had put together would give them the opportunity actually to save a great deal of money at the end of a 10-year period. I won't go into how that formula was set up, but if they had followed the template, that particular homeowner by the end of the 10th year would have had close to $500,000 in the bank, uh, and they would have been had a net worth of about $500,000 if they had followed
Oh,
that template. It did require some discipline in
yeah.
spending, and but I don't know if any of those residents owners ever got to achieve that goal. But that was the goal that we put out there for them to follow.
Gotcha. So, very good points that you bring out, because I can say that I have put eyes on this development that you launched in Newark, New Jersey, having been there and having seen the building and seen the properties that are surrounding the community that you're talking about. And I think what's lost in that is, if you could expound on it a little bit, Dr. Gilliard, is the fact that by trade, you are a person who is committed to building and developing, and you had some experience in that area as well. And aside from that, you are a community leader, and as a shepherd and a leader of people, you combine those two things, and you decided that you were going to uplift that community and the people around them using some of the specific experiences that you had, and as a result, everyone around you in that community benefited from it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. One of the things that we did was we went on and got the training. We went through the New Jersey Affordable Housing Network and got the training of how to put together development projects for nonprofit development project for low income residents. And many of the people that we sold homes to, they had never owned a house before. This was the first time that they were able to own property. And without the program that was put out there, many of them would never have been homeowners. Now, we also looked to do some work in terms of people building. One of the things that I focused on when I came to Flint was working with families and working with men and working with children. Um, One of the things that I found out when I did the project in Newark was that you can put up new buildings, you can put up new houses, but if you don't put the work in to help the people change their mindset. You're putting
Yes.
people in new homes with the same mind frame of mind and the mindset that they had when they were living in other areas and in other conditions. So it's important to work hard to change the mindset of the people in the inner city or in any area where they are struggling and trying to achieve another level of life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, one of the things that we showed before we introduced you and brought you in is, if we could pull that data up again. One of the things that we talked about is how there are so many similarities that exists between the three communities, the urban community, the suburban community, as well as the rural community. And so based on these different things, our topic being building bridges without boundaries, you have some experiences that make you a great candidate. And one of the things I love about Dr. Gilliard is his humility and his focus on just looking at what needs to be done and then taking steps to developmentally get to that place. And so we said that we believe that there is a need for leaders who are able to help people to see that, hey, look, we got more in common than we do and more similarities than we do differences. What do you think stands out to you in terms of the main preventive thing that stops people from developing this thought process, that we have a lot in common with our counterparts in different communities versus saying that we are so different or not alike?
Well, Pastor, I think that one of the things that work against us is the media, and you know, all media is not bad. It's not bad, and so there's some good out there that's being put into the heads of people, but there's also a lot of division that's being sown into the hearts of people. And I think that the thing that keeps us separated is that we don't really talk to one another. We don't really social associate with one another. And I think that if we did more talking, leaders and people in these diverse communities, if we began to do more talking, we would find out that there is a lot that we have in common. And there are a lot of things that we are fighting in our separate communities that if we would just work together instead of being, lone rangers in our own particular community, if we would just combine our efforts and energy to address this problem as a whole social problem and not just a diverse, separate kind of problem that exists only in certain areas, we could get much more accomplished. Again, I think that because of what we have been shown and what we have seen, it gets to the point where we don't believe that these same problems exist in other areas, whereas they really do.
And that brings us to that discussion as you talk about that is, why do you believe that people in these different settings, the urban, suburban, and rural areas, are reluctant to partner in discussing solutions to mutual problems?
I believe that we have the idea that if we help one group or another community, that it will take away from what we're getting and what's available to us. There's this competition that's been breed into us, and that we get to the point where we don't want to see anyone else get, because we believe that they're getting attention or they're getting the resources, mean that those resources will be taken from us. And that's not the case at all. But there again, it's just the misinformation that's being put out there. And until we do come together and begin to talk with one another, we will always have that wall between us. And I hope and I really, expect that there will be some way that we will begin to talk to one another, and we will decide that this problem is greater than us individually. But if we will come together, our combined numbers, our combined energy, our combined mindset will help us to overcome the barriers that are in our own communities. I just believe that that's what needs to happen.
Absolutely, and that is a growth mindset approach that you're discussing here. We've been talking about having a growth mindset that believes that opportunities can arise out of difficult, challenging situations. Another question for you, Dr. Gilliard. I know, and our focus in this series is helping to encourage men to see opportunities for mindset change. So my question for you is, why does providing an opportunity for mindset and supporting men in the community, why does this mean so much to you? And providing an opportunity for a mindset change and supporting men in the community who actually want to take part of that kind of a mindset change.
Well, you look at our the communities that we're speaking about as well. Look at rural and look at urban communities, and even suburban communities. What we'll find is that there is has been and still continues to be the uh, separating of families, the division of families, divorces, taking husbands out of the family, out of the lives of the children, and single mothers having now to try to manage the rearing of the children and taking care of the needs of the home. You know, one thing that was said by one of the authors of the early 20th century, her name was Ellen Glasgow, is that all change is not growth, as all movement is not forward.
Wow.
Everything, all the changes that we see, it's not growth. And what we have to do is we have to begin to understand that the changes that we've seen in the home, uh, the separation of the two, parents, that has had a devastating impact on community. It's hard to have a solid community when you are having homes in that community that are experiencing the devastation of divorce, and in some of the cases where young men are having children but they've never been taught how to be head of households. They've never been taught the need or are given the idea that they are responsible for not only the child, but also they are responsible for the bond and the union between themselves and that woman that had this child with them. Which really the only way to have a good communication and a good bond is through marriage. And it doesn't matter what faith you come from, anything else, but if you don't have that bond of marriage that's holding that family together, then that child does not have a stable home that they can grow up in. So the what's happening in our community is just an outgrowth. It's the consequence of broken homes, broken relationships, and no matter where you are, no matter how much money you have, no matter what position you hold, if that is the case, your home is going to suffer, your children are going to suffer, and your community is going to suffer.
Wow,
Absolutely.
that's really great. And it's like this is such good information to where, this series, the growth mindset for the men, it's just really, really good, and you can expound so much. And so, Dr. Gilliard, so today in 2021, what does the growth mindset look like for someone like yourself who is community minded and determined to build bridges without boundaries?
I'm glad you asked that question. I was doing some research. One of the things that has troubled me is that when we get leadership in our community, we're all finite, so we don't live and we are not here forever. Tragedy strikes, and when we build our leadership, our community structure on individuals, on that one person that's the central node of that particular group, then if that person is no longer at the center of that group, then that group no longer has the same impact that it has. There is a presentation called Key to Understand Communities. The central lies to distributed spectrum. That's the name of it. And they show three models of community. One is called centralized model. The other is decentralized model, and the third is distributed model. And I'm going to just go try to go quickly, but the centralized model is the model that goes on that is built on relationships and power that flows through a central node, NODE, which is to be organized, which is to be an organization or an individual. So Martin Luther King and the civil rights movements, let's use that as an example. So Martin Luther King was that centralized figure, that node that the movement was built around. And so when his assassination took place, as you could see from history, the movement really lost a lot. Um, One of the things that was good was that it did have some attachments. There were some other community attachments to that centralized organization, but they did not have the same thrust once the centralized power figure was gone. And when we're trying to develop now a new structure that's going to deal with community, deal with change, it's not ideal that we build it around one individual. That decentralized figure, that structure, it was is still using the central personnel, but it's in different groups
Oh,
around that around that thought.
Okay,
Um,
gotcha. Hmm.
so
gotcha.
they lose some power once the centralized figure is gone, and then but the main thing that I like about the last one, which is the distributed communities, is that we have the idea or the goal that we're trying to work with, and we get all the groups to focus on that goal. And so you're not building around individuals, you're building around you're building around an idea, you're building around
Right.
a goal, and so if we put it out there that we're trying to change our communities, trying to change the drug situation, trying to change the crime situation, and we're all working together, no matter where our communities are, then it cannot be hurt. The movement cannot be destroyed if one or two individuals get knocked off or move on, because it's a movement that's not based on people. It's a personnel. It's a movement that's based on a goal, a common goal. And so the whole idea is to get the people in these communities invested together in working towards the correction of those ills in the community, and that becomes the goal that everyone is working on. It's a societal movement, is what we're talking about, and what we're looking at today. I believe that it is going to require a societal movement where it's no one group that's working towards correcting the situation, but it is all of us working in union, in unity, to correct the situation that is going to impact everyone, no matter where you live. And that
Absolutely.
chart that you showed us, it tells us that our problems are not in any one place, but our problem is statewide, is countrywide, and that's what we have to really come to grips with.
Yep, yep, I agree. I agree 100%. And I think that, and I think that the one thing that stands out to me, aside from the fact that there's just such a wealth of wisdom and to be gleaned from, and I know in the discussions that I've had with you, Dr. Gilliard, that there's a lot that based on experiences, based on having a outlook that is all encompassing concerning the community, is that there's a lot to be discussed. And I think that this really opens the door for us. We're going to have to do a follow-up interview with you, Dr. Gilliard. So we're going to have to set up to be able to really have some time to just take some more nuggets from you in the near future. I mean, the very near future.
I would be glad to, to spend time, because I really appreciate what you're doing, and it's programs like this that's going to have make the difference, and it's going to have a great impact, because I'm praying that it will bring the minds of the people together and get us to see that we have more, as you say, in common than we have apart.
Absolutely. So can I ask you one more question before we leave, Dr. Gilliard? And I need you to give me the 30, 45-second response. How do you or would you go about encouraging men who are husbands or single, fathers and heads of household within the community to change their approach to implementing community changes? How would you, go about encouraging men of all walks who are committed to the community, or maybe not committed today, but taking a mindset change to help be able to support community initiatives?
I believe that the women have held they have held this thing together and the mantle together for so long. If the men would just come back and take part in the fight, this is what I'm saying. If we would just take part and do our part in the fight to save our society, I believe that we'll see a great difference. It's going to take the men to come back and see that if they don't do what is expected of them as men, then our world is in trouble.
Absolutely.
Our world is really in trouble. Thank you.
Good. Well, we thank you for joining us today, Dr. Gilliard. Again, we will be reaching back out to you, because we can't put too much of a gap between this discussion that we've had today and our discussion that we want to have with you as a follow-up. Again, thank you for joining us today. And we want to, at this time, wrap up and thank everyone for joining us on today. We invite you and encourage you to join us for future episodes of AllDay Edify, the show, where our aim is to uplift, inform, and enlighten you
all day, every day.
Do you provide human services? Are you an entrepreneur that contributes to society? Do you have access to tools and resources that facilitate growth and development? Come be a guest on our show. You can email us at alldayedify@gmail.com or send us a message on our Facebook page at AllDay Edify.